Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. It's good to see you here. And today we're going to do a bit of a special video. I'm going to talk about a board game, Stoneage. I hope you like it. So this game here, let's start talking about this game, was published in 2008. Number of suggested players 2 to 4, best with 4 players. Suggested age 10 and up. Playing time, they say 60 minutes in the box. Personally, sometimes it can even take twice as long. It really depends on how much time the other players spend looking at their iPhone, for goodness sake. But that's beyond the point. Subdomain, strategy game, mechanics, dice rolling and worker placement. It's a German. So let's actually begin with the unboxing. So let's start with the game contents, with the unboxing. So as you can see, there are many different pieces. Most of them are made of wood and leather, so not cheap stuff. This is one game board and it's very nice. It's folded at the moment. These are player boards. We have 4 player boards, and later on I will explain what they are used for. Just like you to have a look at how they are made at the moment. Then something that really puzzled me at first. It's very nice. I was very surprised. It's a leather dice cup and 7 dice. Here we have resources. They are all made of wood and they are 58, and we have many different kinds of resources, which I will explain later on as I will explain game mechanics and actual gameplay. Here we have a start player figure. Then here we have basically building tiles. Okay, so these ones are 28 building tiles. Then we have civilization cards. We have 36 civilization cards, very beautifully made, as you can see. Then we have these ones here are called tool tiles, and we have 18 of those. And then my favorite, we have food tiles, 53 food tiles. So as you can see, you get a lot of stuff. Then here we have basically 40 people still made in wood and in 4 different colors, and an information sheet. Now in this case I have it in German, but obviously you can find it in English if you need on the internet. Alright, so let's have a look at the actual game board. As you can see, it's very colorful, very beautiful from an artistic point of view. I really like the way they have drawn this. So the whole board is divided into areas. This is the village, these 3 separate areas here. This is where you get your civilization cards. I will obviously explain how cards work later. Now, food is very important in this game because at the end of each turn you need to feed your population. So if you have 5 workers, you need to have 5 food units. Now this is the food track where you count the amount of wheat you have, but the other way to make food is in the hunting grounds. And you have the little wheat image on the top just to remind you what it's there for. These are the hunting grounds. This is where you go and get your food for your population. This is the forest, and that's where you get the wood as a resource. As you can see, there are 7 places. This is the clay pit, and that's where you get the brick. Again, also here, 7 places. This is the quarry, and that's where you get the stone. Again, 7 places. That's the same for all resources. This is the river, and that's where you get the gold. Here, this one here is the tool maker within the village, as we said. This is the hut, and that's where you make people. As you can see, there are 2 little spaces. Here, only 1 space. It's the field. That's where you make wheat. So in the hunting grounds is where you place the food tiles. When you have the tile with number 10 represents meat, number 5 represents fish, 2 represents mushroom, and number 1 represents berries, I suppose, so probably gatherers rather than hunters. It doesn't really matter. So this is what it would look like. In this part here, the tool maker, you place the tools. I'd recommend to place them this way, with number 1 and number 3 upward. Then place wood in the forest, place brick in the clay pit, place stone in the quarry, place gold in the river. Then place your building tiles in the appropriate place, just underneath the village, and turn the first tile. This is what your game board should look like now. Then start placing the first 4 civilization cards, after shuffling, that is. Alright, and this is what your game board should look like at the moment. Now we can start talking about the player card. Now here you will have all the information about your specific tribe. So as you can see, on the right side is where you place your cards, so the cards that you actually buy during the game, and you also have a little summary of the final score. I will talk about this later. Then here we have the yields and points values for resources. This is where you place your building tiles, the one you actually buy during the game. And then here you place your tools. In the rest of the board you can place resources, food tiles and population. Your starting population is 5 men. As you can see on the right side here, the remaining 5 men will not be collected. We only collect the starting 5 men. The remaining 5 men, which are potential men, will be placed on the right side, and my suggestion is to place them in the following manner, to make sure you don't by mistake take one of these as if they were actual available workers. Then you have these 2 wooden markers. The big one will be used to keep track of your points, which you will place here. You will do the same with all the other colors of the other players. The small one will be used to keep track of your wheat, so it will be placed here in the food track together with all the other players. So now each player will roll a dice to see who's going to start first. So let's say that I rolled a 4. So I will be the first player and I get the first player figure. I choose blue as my color, so I have my 5 men initially, as you can see. And the whole game is based on how I place these workers. I can choose in my turn to place whatever number of men I want within my population limit, in which case is 5 at the moment. So I have to choose where to place. For example, in this case I choose to place 1 man here in the field, but I could have placed it anywhere. Placing it in the field will allow me to get 1 wheat and increase the value of wheat I have in store. But I could have also chosen to put 2 men in the, or maybe a man and a woman, should we say, in the hut to make a newborn baby, let's say. So the new person will be placed in the player's card and will be able to be used from next turn. I could have also chosen to place 1 man in the tool maker. This way I would gain 1 tool and place it in my player card. Also, another option would have been to place a certain amount of men in the actual hunting grounds, and I can place any number of men I want in here, still depending on my population limit obviously. So I can choose to place 1, to place 2, or even to place 3, 4, or all of them, for example. These men will gather food. So why is it important the number of people I put? Because that will determine the number of dice I will throw or roll to see how much resources I will gather. So another thing I could have done was to place workers in the forest to gather wood. In this case I have a limit of 7, but at the moment, since my population limit is 5, I cannot place more than 5 anyways. Same thing, I can choose to send men, workers, to gather bricks in the clay pit or any other resource areas. Again, the number of workers I place will determine the number of dice I will roll. Each resource will have a specific number that will need to be reached or attained in order to gain that resource. Another possible thing is to use one of my men to actually try and build something in my part of the in my player's card. I do this by placing a man on top of the tile that I'm interested in. This will give me 12 victory points immediately, but it will cost the resources written at the bottom of the card, in this case 2 wood and 1 gold. So in the first turn it's not something that can be done since you have no resources at first. You first need to gather resources. But let's say that I had these resources. If I had 2 pieces of wood and 1 of gold, I simply put them back in the appropriate area, get my worker back, and I get the card, and then I turn the other card just underneath it. Also, I can use my workers to purchase the civilization cards, which I find in this area of the map. The price is indicated on top. It can be paid with any resource except for food, using either 1, 2, 3 or 4 resources, depending on where the card is placed. Normally you'd rather pay them with wood or brick. Resources can be mixed, so I can pay with 1 wood and 1 brick, but occasionally it does happen that if the only resource you have is gold, for example, and you want to use it, you will use that. So in this case I will use 1 piece of wood and I will get this card. I will explain what cards do later on in this video. After you get 1 card, you need to show it to the other players once, and then you can cover it up. So let's try and play 1 turn. Things will be a lot easier to understand if we actually play 1 turn. So the first thing you need to do is that each player needs to get a starting amount of 12 food tiles. So just place them on your player's card. Then you can choose what to do with your workers. So let's say that I chose to use 1 worker and place it in the fields. Then it's the green's turn. He chooses to take 2 workers and place them in the hut. It will then be the red's turn. The red player decides that he wants to go to the toolmaker, but he cannot, since in the village area you can only have 2 different tribes of colors. So since he cannot do that, he changes his mind, takes 3 workers and places them in the hunting grounds. The yellow player now decides his move. He decides to take all his workers and place them all in the forest to increase his chances of collecting wood. So again, the blue player still has 4 workers left. So let's have a look at the situation here. We have a look at where other players have placed their own workers, and he decides to put 2 workers in the forest. The green player has 3 men left, and he decides to take 2 men, and he also at first wanted to go to the forest, but he cannot since 7 places have been filled up, so he decides to put them in the clay pit. Now the yellow player has no workers left, so he has to pass the turn. Now the blue player only has 2 workers left, and he decides to put them in the river to try and collect gold. The green player has 1 worker left. So what is he going to do? Well, if he wanted to go to the forest, he cannot. But he cannot put this worker in the clay pit because he has already done so, and you cannot place twice in the same area. So he decides to go to the hunting grounds. The red player with the remaining 2 workers goes to the quarry. It is now time to get the resources. Now if you remember, in the case of the blue player, we had placed a worker in the field, so we get automatically 1 point of wheat. In the case of the green player, we have 2 workers in the hut, so we get 1 extra worker. In the case of the red player, since he's in the hunting grounds, he placed 3 workers, so you need to roll 3 dice. So we put them in the dice roller, and we get a 14. Now in the case of food, the value for 1 unit of food is 2. So basically we divide it by 2. With 14 we get 7 units of food. the values for each resource will be found in the player's card. So what we do now, we add the newly acquired food units in the player card. Here, the yellow player has placed 5 workers in the forest, so we will roll 5 dice to see how much wood he can collect. Same process. We roll it, and there you go. In the case of wood, the initial value is 3. So in this case, we get 5 units of wood, because we divided it by 3. We divided the sum by 3. It's actually good for maths. And we place them on the player's board. Now the green player only has 2 workers, so we roll the dice, we get a 7, 1 brick, wants 4 at least, so we only have 1 brick in this case. So we take it and we place it on the board. So as you can see, the mechanics are quite simple, not too complicated. Now the red player, we have only a 2, considering that the basic value for stone is 5. Unfortunately, bad luck, he doesn't get any. So the blue player still has 2 workers in the river. The basic value for gold is 6, so with a 7 we get 1 piece of gold. 1 worker for the green in the hunting grounds, we get a 4, so we have 2 units of food. Maybe they're potatoes. Well, that's okay, doesn't really matter. Then always make sure every time you roll a dice or you get something to retrieve your workers. This is really important. You need to do this immediately after. So let's talk about the cards and how to score points. Basically in this game you can get points in 2 ways, either immediately or at the end of the game. You can use the scoring track up here to keep track of your points. Now, in order to get immediate points, what you need to do is to build these buildings. So you buy these cards through resources in the game and get immediately the points. So for example, let's have a look at this card. If I want to build this card, I need to pay 2 wood and 1 brick. If I have these resources and I place 1 worker, I can immediately get 10 points. The civilization cards instead will give you a certain amount of points at the end of the game. There are many tiles for building, but basically there are 2 kinds. One is where you have immediately, these are the easiest ones to understand, you immediately see how many points they give you and what resources you need to build them. The second kind instead doesn't really give you information on how many points they will give you, and they have strange figures and images at the bottom, which I will explain now. If you take one, for example, you see there is a 5, which means you need 5 resources of, which you see in the bracket, 1 kind. So 5 gold, 5 wood, 5 brick, whatever you want. This one here instead, you still have 5 resources of 2 different kinds. So you could do, for example, 3 wood and 2 gold. Obviously, gold would actually give you more points, whereas wood will give you less points. 1 to 7 is one of my favorites, one of the best ones. You can use 1 to 7 resources of 1 kind. So if you actually manage to pile up 7 gold, considering that each gold is 6 as value, you will multiply that by 7, and that's the amount of points you get. But you can also decide to buy this, for example, with wood or brick, depending on the strategy and the situation. You only have 3 cards like this, so you might want to keep an eye on them. These civilization cards instead, they give you points at the end of the game. So when the game finishes, and I will explain how the game finishes in a moment, when the game finishes you can see what cards you have to see how many points you will earn at the end. Now, green cards, each one has a value of 5 victory points, so collecting these could be a good idea. So the points they give you, you will only earn at the end of the game, but if you look at the top of the card, that's actually what you get immediately as you get the card in the game. So it still gives you something. Normally not victory points, occasionally, but in most cases the actual resources you see. Now these cards here are a bit special. the player who buys the card can roll a die and actually get the resource. So if he rolls a 6, he will get +1 wheat, and then all the other players clockwise will get the following resources. And then, as you can see, for example, this one here will grant you a free card. This is one of my favorites, +1 wheat. So you buy the card and you get the resources, the bonuses you see on the top of the card, and if it's a green card, at the end of the game, 5 points per each. These cards with a little population figure at the bottom, they also, as all the others, immediate bonuses, but what really matters is the little figure at the bottom. You will multiply the number of men with white beard by the population you have. So if you have, for example, 10 workers at the end of the game and you get 5 little men, you will have 10 multiplied by 5, you will have 50 points to add at the end of the game, and that's a lot. The same principle applies with these cards here. They also have immediate bonuses marked at the top, but at the bottom you have little workers. So these will be multiplied by the number of building tiles that you will have. So again, if you have, for example, 4 of these and you have 10 building tiles, you will have 40 points to add to your score. So basically this is the principle with these cards. And the idea is the same here. You see the ones with wheat. So if you always put your workers in the field and you manage to have, for example, 3 of these cards with the little men, for example, 2 little men, 1, so you get 4 little men here, and you have 10 in your wheat track, you will have again 40 points at the end of the game. So the whole purpose here is trying to get as many points as you can at the end. And here you do the same thing, but with the tools. And you see the little men working there with the little pieces of stone. If you have, for example, 2 of these and you have 8 tools, you will have 16 points. So it really depends on that. You can try and build up your secret strategy, trying to make sure that the other players don't remember which cards you have bought. So, ready for the final verdict. We have fun factor, strategy factor, game speed and quality of components. Now, as far as the fun factor is concerned, I have to say that I have enjoyed all my games. It's really entertaining, perhaps not one of the most addictive, but definitely deserves a solid 8 out of 10. We had a lot of fun, it's not too complex, the mechanics are fluid, it's definitely a fun game. Strategy sometimes can be a little simple, but since there is this idea with points that you can get in 2 different ways, I definitely go for an 8 out of 10. I really like the idea of the hidden cards, and versus the idea of getting points immediately with the other tiles, the building tiles. You really need to get, you need to try a few games to find out your own strategy, or maybe a balanced way within the 2. So definitely an 8 out of 10 for strategy. Now, game speed is one of the good things of this game, so it deserves a 9 out of 10. It's really quick. Sometimes you can even play it in 1 hour or an hour and a half. So if you really want a game that it's quick, you can play with your friends, even play a couple of times in one afternoon, or just want to spend a couple of hours, an hour and a half maximum, then definitely this is a game for you. But the quality of components, that's another really kicker for this game, because as you have seen, beautiful from an artistic point of view, leather, wood, definitely a 9 out of 10. I'm not going for 10 out of 10 because there are other games that give you more the idea of a 3-dimensional place. This game doesn't really give you that much of an idea as far as 3D components are concerned, so I'm not going for 10 out of 10, but I do appreciate all the work, the artists that have drawn all the different figures and the board game have put into this game. So definitely a 9 out of 10. It's a beautiful game. Now, ready for the final verdict? The final verdict for Stoneage here at the Metatron's channel will be a 8 out of 10. It's an excellent game and one of my personal favorites. Perhaps it's not the best game that you could have out there, but considering that it's not that expensive either, it's definitely a game that I would suggest you to buy. as you have noticed, in this game there is a lack of war. So if you are a player who wants his battles and war games, then probably it's not a game for you. But if you are a player who likes the idea of working and having to think where to place your workers and how to get your resources, and you like a game where you can actually, you know, play relaxed, then definitely that's a game for you. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you again for all your support. Please rate, comment below, let me know what you think, subscribe to my channel, and make sure to watch my other videos. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.